Today's Scots are descendants from ancient Greek Kalidones, and this gives rise to the ancient name of Scotland, Caledonia. And the Scots, as we know today, even pronounce the R in the same way Greeks pronounce the R. And that would say, in English, you'd say, for example, rough. In Scotland, you'd say rough. And that's the same way Greeks pronounce R. But going to this beautiful image of this article, this is not the first time I spoke about Scotland and Greeks who had settled there. And most of them were, of course, from Sparta, the tribe of Dan. So this is the elements of which we base our view, the writer says here. The behavior of some Scots is shouldered towards the Cypriot independence struggle of 1955, Caledonia or Scotland today, the references of Tacitus in the book Agricola and Solinus Ilius about Caledonia, the Greek names of the tribes, cities, and geographical elements that are on the geographical map of Claudius Ptolemy, which was prepared in the 2nd century AD, the position of the Caledonians, the Scots, that they differ from the English, and their struggles to create a separate state. But I'll go down directly to the Caledonia, Scotland. Scotland is the northern part of Britain. The Cheviot Mountains separate England from Scotland. The capital of Scotland is Edinburgh. Scotland consists of 800 islands. Most are uninhabited. Scots, the new name of the Caledonians. It's questionable whether the name Scots in Scotland was found. All we find is in Sean's Stuffy History in Ireland, page 40. The Romans, quote, the Romans called Ireland Scotia and the Scotians. The area of Caledonia got its name Scotland from this, end quote. Why now we write Scotland? Well, let the experts explain that. Scotland is a country in Europe, part of Great Britain, to which it belongs politically. The population about 5 million. The northernmost part of Scotland is mountainous and sparsely populated. No foreign power from ancient times influenced them. That is why its inhabitants preserve their language, clothing, dances, music. Even the pipisa, the Greek bagpipe, is also what we see the bagpipers of Scotland using. The dances, their costumes, and their traditions. Now, their language today is Gaelic. They still speak Scottish and English. Their name, Caledonia, is probably related to Caledonia, the city in Aetolia in central Greece. Her king was Oinos. It's known that its inhabitants did not offer the beginnings, their first offspring's first fruit, to the goddess Artemis. That's why Artemis sent them the Caledonian bear, a wild and bodily wild boar which killed the farmers, destroying their crops. The boar was killed by Meleagros. Then they offered Artemis their first fruits, built a temple for her, and made her their patron saint. Caledonia is also mentioned by Aristotle in his poem 11.55 in the country of Pelops. And then we refer the reference of Tacitus to Agricola about the Caledonians. The Romans were invaders in Caledonia, and their purpose was to conquer it and exploit it. The Romans invaded them for that reason, and their first impression, as Tacitus told Agricola, quote, is that it is a dangerous country for any invader. First, the invaders had to fight to save their lives and then think about victory. The force of the Caledonian is the infantry. Sometimes they use it in wars and chariots, like the heroes of the Trojan War, end quote. In the book of Tacitus, Agricola, written 1997 to 98 AD, tells a story of the Roman war effort to conquer Britain and Caledonia. Operations began 55 BC with Julius Caesar. They continued until 77 AD, so all of England was occupied and Caledonia remained free. In 77 AD, Agricola took over as governor of occupied Britain. From 77 to 82 AD, he did 7 big campaigns. He defeated the British and reached the hilly region of Caledonia. Impressed by the intimidating movements of the Caledonians and fearing the revolt of the northern cities, he used his fleet for the first time to demonstrate strength and to monitor the ports. The Caledonians attacked one of the Roman camps without provocation, causing great damage. The Romans counterattacked and wanted to go deeper into Caledonia and continue fighting until they reached its edge, but they could not do this, and they didn't do it. Support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box. The speech of the leader Calgak and what he said to the Caledonians. The Caledonians were fearless of the losses in the previous battles and gladly wanted revenge rather than enslavement. They had to face the common enemy together. All the states united and formed an army of 30,000 men. The Roman military force was 4 legions, that's about 40,000 men in their army. In addition, they had 3,000 cavalry and 8,000 reserve troops. One of the leaders of the Caledonians, Calgacus, addressed the soldiers who were thirsty for war with these words. He said, "Good morning. The enthusiasm and determination with which you are facing this crisis that has befallen us makes me hope that the moment of freedom for all of Britain is approaching. We, Britain's finest flower, are precious in these places, invisible by the enemy located on the conquered shores. We have our eyes proud because we are free from the tyrannical presence. Behind us are rocks and waves, and in the sea the robbers of the world, the Romans. Wealth and the thirst for power ignite their greed and rob, slaughter and plunder. They kidnap our men and send them as slaves to other places. Our women and sisters are deceived by the enemy, dishonored. They seize our lives and force us to open roads in swamps and forests. Do not expect sorrow from the invaders. If you love your honor and your life, you look worthy of the times. In front of us is the army of the Romans. If they defeat us, it means for us a torture and humiliated life, that of a slave. Go forward to the battle with the front high, guided by the sacrifice of those who were lost and with the hope of a better life for those who will come." End quote. Tacticus Agricola used all his forces during the ensuing conflict in the Crabiana Mountains. He defeated the Caledonians but did not advance to the north of the country. He built many forts to protect himself from the Caledonians. Adrian built a wall from the east coast to the west, and this in order to repel the attacks of the disobedient Caledonians. In the 5th century AD, the Roman legion left Britain, and we have 2 facts about the language that they spoke. The first is what is mentioned in the memoirs of Julius Caesar, that the inhabitants of Albion, that is Britain, had slight differences in language, that is, they spoke the same language all over Britain. He also tells us that his legionnaires communicated with the Gauls in the Greek Homeric language, which they spoke and wrote. The second element is the one mentioned by the Roman writer Solinus C. Ilius, 250 AD, in his book Collectana Rerum Memorabilium. He writes that Homeric Odyssey reached Caledonia. It is proved by an engraved writing on a slab of an altar with Greek letters. Those who wrote must have known Greek, and those who would read them again must have known Greek. Therefore, it can be said that their language is related to Greek. The Greek language was spoken long before the 2nd century BC millennium and was at a high level of perfection. Cicero said, "If gods are chosen, the language of the Greeks is painted." We said that in Albion and Caledonia, the Greek dodecatheon was worshipped, the 12 gods of Mount Olympus, that is. The Caledonians would be proud to speak the language of their gods, Greek. Now, the religion of the Caledonians, Tacitus tells us that they performed the same rituals over Britain. In other words, they were Druids. They came, therefore, so we can assume that they have the same faith as the religious tradition of the Druids and the ancient Greeks, of the 12 gods of Olympus. In the book Ancient Greeks in Britain, it was proved that the British believed in the Greek 12, and we could take this into account the megalithic monuments of Caledonia that were religious sites such as Kalidones in the Arctic Islands, of Casterig in the Krabiana Mountains, of Stennis in the Orcades Islands, of Malho in the Orcades Islands, and the ring of Brogar in the Orcades Islands, of Pictish stone throughout Caledonia, and others were similar to those of England and Ireland, when we can accept that the inhabitants of the British Isles had the same religion. Because in England, we claimed our previous research they believed in Greek 12, especially in the god Apollo. The same can be said of the inhabitants of Caledonia. Caledonia costume, the Scottish kilt, as we know, similar costume that was of the Mycenaean warriors, the hoplites. Now, the Mycene being, of course, around Sparta, Argos, Leonidas in the 300. Now, gaida, the musical instrument, the Greek bagpipe, pipiza, is also what the Scots used for their bagpipes, identical to the skavlos of our ancients, the ancestors, and their dance similar to the Pyrrhic dance of the ancient Greeks. Then you have names of locations. The presence of the ancient Greeks in Caledonia, Scotland, is certified by the many Greek names of tribes, cities, and geographical elements. The names are on the geographical map of Northern Europe of Claudius Ptolemy, 108 to 168 AD. He was a geographer from Alexandria. And these names are also mentioned in the geographical maps made by the Romans in the 1st century AD. These names are about 80. All of these will be mentioned. Orcades Islands, Orki, Gla or Ilion, Pteroton, Camp, Tina, Lemanonia, Gulf, Linos, City of Rhodes, Ali, String, Caravatorigon, Carvas, Curion, many more. Carnus, Nakos means sheepskin. Carnus means sheep. Carnonakia means horn. Decante, deities of the zodiac signs. Creonus, Creon meaning king, the king. Now, relations of the Caledonians with the English. In the old days, before Romans tried to conquer Britain, its inhabitants have the same religion, the same language. It's mentioned by Tacitus. It's also mentioned in the speech, the leader of Caledons, Calgacus, telling them that this battle between us and the Romans can bring the liberation of the whole of Britain. There must therefore be a kinship and friendship between the people of Britain, that they must feel that they belong to the same race. When the Romans left Britain in the 5th century, there must have been a difference between those living north of the Hadrian Wall and those living south. The northerners, the Caledones, that is the Scots, were the free, the ruthless to the Romans. The southerners were the slaves of the Romans, the Britons that is. They were enslaved and would not be as proud as the northerners, the Scots, the Caledonians. But the southerners were much more. They had better and more land to cultivate and could easily develop livestock, and the people who developed agriculture and animal husbandry can easily develop trade, industry, science, and generally become more advanced people. The northerners, the Scots that is, on the other hand, did not have these facilities. Their life is more difficult in their rugged, inaccessible areas. When their population exceeded 4 million, they were forced to leave their place and find another place to live. And this happened in the pictures of Caledonia, who most of them went to Ireland to find a better life. In the 6th century AD, those of the Picts who remained and all the Caledonians converted to Christianity, and thus the co-religion between North and South continued. In the 8th century AD, Scandinavians invade Britain, creating the British state, which included South and Caledonians, that is Scotland. The Caledonians did not accept it and started a war against the South, the English, for their independence. And, now, despite, after the various histories between England and Scotland, in 1968, the Scottish National Party won a majority in the local government elections and the effort to create a separate state to be represented in the UN countries. And this I've translated for you from a Greek article. Contemplations, periodical published in Holy Metropolis of Kikos of Cyprus. This is written by ecclesiastical people, August 2008, and it's I've translated for you from a Greek article. I hope you found it interesting. Those of you who are Scots know that you have roots from Sparta. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support.